The wind moved hard through the narrow canyon, pushing snow along the ground in long, sharp waves. A lone rancher rode slowly through the pass, his coat pulled tight, his horse uneasy beneath him. This road was meant to be quiet, but something felt off. Then he saw it. A wagon lay smashed at the base of the rocks, its wheels broken, its sides torn apart as if ripped open in a hurry. Dark shapes lay scattered in the snow around it. As he drew closer, he saw they were bodies, half covered, frozen where they had fallen. No signs of struggle left, only the cold and a heavy stillness that pressed on his chest. He slid down from his horse, one hand near his gun, moving with care. As he checked the wreck, a small movement caught his eye. Beneath the broken wagon frame lay a woman, barely breathing. Her clothes were fine, clean ones, rich in color. Nothing like this place. He knelt beside her, brushing snow from her face with slow, steady hands. Her skin was ice cold. For a moment he thought he was too late. Then he pressed his fingers to her neck and felt it. A faint, uneven beat. The sky darkened as the wind picked up, snow starting to fall harder. Staying here meant trouble. Whoever did this could come back, and the cold would finish what they started. He looked at the bodies one last time, lowering his head in quiet respect. Then he made his choice. He shrugged off his heavy coat and wrapped it tight around the woman, pulling her close to his chest to share his warmth. She felt light in his arms as he lifted her. Without another word, he set her across the saddle, mounted his horse, and turned toward his ranch, riding fast as the storm closed in behind them. His cabin sat alone among the trees, far from any road or neighbor. He pushed the door open and carried her inside, the cold air rushing out as warmth took its place. He laid her near the fire and fed it until the flames burned strong. The quiet was thick, broken only by the wind outside and the crack of wood. He worked with care, rubbing her frozen hands, warming her skin little by little, cleaning the dirt and blood where he could. She never opened her eyes. As he helped her, he noticed the fine cloth of her dress, the careful stitching, the kind of work only rich hands could afford. It made him uneasy, but he pushed the thought away. Outside, the storm grew worse, sealing the cabin shut. The night dragged on, and he stayed awake, watching her chest rise and fall, knowing one wrong moment could take her life. Sometime before dawn, she woke with a sharp breath and tried to pull away. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear, her body shaking as she took in the small room. She spoke fast in a language he didn't know, her voice tight and broken. The rancher stepped back at once, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. He spoke slowly, keeping his voice low and steady, the way he would calm a scared animal. He set a cup of water and a small bowl of food on the floor, then moved away and waited. After a long moment, her breathing eased. She watched him closely, then reached for the water with shaking hands. When she spoke again, it was quiet. She said her name, the sound soft and unfamiliar. He tapped his chest and answered with his own, plain and simple. The snow didn't stop for days, cutting them off from the rest of the world. She stayed close to the fire, resting, her strength returning little by little. They spoke only when needed, using simple words, hands, and looks to understand each other. Mornings settled into quiet routines. He brought in wood and tended the fire. She cleaned the small space, set out food, and folded blankets with care. When she felt steady enough, she insisted on helping, even if it was only small things. Without meaning to, the rancher began to change. He moved more softly and listened more. The cabin, once cold and empty, now felt lived in. He saw how she carried herself, calm and steady despite all she had lost. At times, she would sit nearby and watch him work, her eyes sharp, learning his world in silence. One afternoon, he found her holding the dress she had been wearing when he pulled her from the snow. The fabric was torn and stained, and her hands trembled as she touched it. It was more than clothing to her. When he asked where she was from, she looked away, her face closing off. Later, as he cleaned his rifle, he thought of the wagon again. The weapons left behind were not meant for traders. They were the kind carried by trained guards. That night, she finally spoke, her voice low. The men had been there to protect her. They died because of her. She did not say much more, only that her father was a man with great power. and that her future had already been chosen for her. She had run, not for adventure, but to breathe on her own. At that moment, he understood. Someone would come looking. The warning came without sound. His horse grew tense, ears pinned back, just as a rider stepped out from the trees near the fence line. The man looked clean, calm, and well-fed, wearing clothes meant for towns, not hard land. He greeted the rancher with an easy smile and asked about a wagon that never arrived. His voice was polite, but his eyes missed nothing. The rancher answered in a steady tone, "Better or full bim," saying he'd seen only wreckage and dead men, nothing worth staying for. The stranger listened, nodding, but doubt showed in his face. He spoke of gold, more money than this land would ever give. His gaze drifted to the cabin, to the thin trail of smoke rising from the roof. Then he tipped his hat and rode off toward the trees. He didn't go far. The rancher knew that much. That night, she stood near the door, her face tight with worry. She told him she knew the man would return. People like that did not give up. She said she could leave, walk out into the snow, and spare him the trouble. He listened without interrupting, then shook his head. This was his land, his home. No one would take someone from it by force. He told her she was safe here, as long as she chose to stay. There was no promise of love in his words, only a firm line he would not cross. She studied his face, then nodded once. The choice was made. Night fell like a heavy blanket, and the wind carried an edge of danger. Suddenly, a fireball struck the cabin, flames licking at the dry wood. The rancher shouted, diving to the side as gunshots rang out, splinters flying from the door. She grabbed a thick rug, smothering the flames with quick, desperate movements, helping where she could without getting in the way. The front door splintered under forceful blows, and the hunter stepped inside. Revolvers drawn, eyes cold and steady. The rancher met him, rifle ready, firing without hesitation. The final shots rang out, and the man fell, still and quiet in the snow outside. Inside, the cabin smelled of smoke and gunpowder. They both stood for a moment, hearts pounding, catching their breath. The danger had passed, but the weight of violence settled between them, unspoken and heavy. There was no going back. The next morning, they buried the hunter in the hard earth past the tree line, marking the grave with a simple pile of stones. The threat had passed, at least for now, and the air felt lighter. She opened her trunk and removed the dress and trinkets that tied her to another life, folding them carefully and leaving them at the bottom. She chose simpler clothes, rough but warm, and for the first time spoke her own name, saying it aloud like claiming it for herself. She would stay here in the quiet, with the rancher who said nothing but accepted her choice. In that small act, power and fear were left behind, traded for safety, and a new life began. Spring finally came, melting the snow and turning the valley green. They worked the land together, lifting rails, fixing fences, and tending to the small herd. Words were few, replaced by shared effort and understanding. He handed her tools, she passed him water, and their movements fell into a quiet rhythm. At times, he caught her watching him with a faint smile, and she noticed how he glanced at her without saying anything. There were no grand declarations, only the steady work of building a life side by side. When the sun climbed high, they paused on a flat rock overlooking the valley, hands brushing briefly, shoulders relaxed. This was their home, chosen and hard-won. In the silence, it was clear. Sometimes the safest place is the one no one wants.